Hello and welcome to the Beyond B2B Marketing podcast. I'm your host, Lee Odden, CEO of Top Rank Marketing. And today we have a guest that is someone that I go back way back with, back to 2013 when my company was providing some marketing consulting services to him when he was executive director of digital marketing at Dell. And then again, when he was CMO at Dun Bradstreet. Now, he's gone on to serve as CMO at Vonage and CMO at MongoDB. And today he is partner at Bain Company. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Rishi Dave. Welcome to the show, Rishi.
I'm so excited to be back with you again. It's been so long.
It has been a long time. So let's jump right into it. So you've been CMO at some pretty substantial companies, and I'm kind of curious if you could tell us about what led you to transition from that CMO role to partner at Bain Company.
Yeah, so I was actually at Bain Company early in my career, and then I had left for a long time, and I came back. And I think the main reason why I kind of went back to Bain Company was, I'd been a CMO at multiple companies, as you mentioned, and they are tough jobs and they are stressful jobs. And also I was kind of ready to kind of take a break from my CMO roles and do something a bit different. And so, Bain had an incredible opportunity to really build its capabilities way back when I joined in B2B marketing. And so I joined really focused on building Bain's B2B marketing capabilities. And I love it. And what I love about it is focusing on my passion, which you and I both have, which is B2B marketing. And then two, just working with a wide variety of companies at all different sizes, dealing with marketing. And specifically, I mean, what more exciting time to be consulting in marketing than now with the changes in tech and data and AI. And so it's very exciting for me to be in this role.
I agree. It is an exciting time. There's so much change, and that means opportunity, right? For folks who have the vision to see it. I'm curious if you can lean in a little more into like what kinds of things are you doing as are you as a consultant or for the kinds of work at helping other companies advance their B2B marketing initiatives at Bain?
Yeah, so a wide variety of work. You can guess the last couple years, a lot of it has been around AI. And the big questions around AI in marketing have been, not, necessarily, you know, necessarily what I do with AI day to day, but more how do I implement AI and make the operating model changes I need to get real scalable benefits and scalable changes that really drive bottom line benefits like, bottom line profitability, get things faster time to market and improve the quality of things going to market. Um, that all that rapid acceleration enabled by AI. And so I've been focusing a lot on that. A lot of marketers and even beyond marketing, they're trying AI in kind of these isolated use cases or within existing models and seeing, little micro productivity gains. Like I'm a content writer, I can write content a little bit faster. But where we're really seeing the benefits and where I'm spending a lot of my time is let's step back and relook at the entire process of building content. Now that we have AI, how do we, drastically reduce the time to market, improve the quality? And so I spent a lot of time doing that. That's probably most of the things I'm doing right now. But I also spent a lot of time doing marketing operating model changes. So a lot of companies are rethinking their marketing operating model and then doing a lot of capability building, like data, tech, AI, obviously I mentioned, and digital. And so there's just a lot of things going on. The last thing I spend a lot of my time doing is, how do you really go to market more effectively with the sales team in B2B? And so a lot of integrated go to market strategy and planning and execution.
Great. So we actually did an interview once before, and this was 10 years ago. And you mentioned content. Yeah. And so let's kind of dust that off and ask you a question about one of your predictions. No, actually you did. You made a very astute prediction, I guess. And you said there may not be a need for more content, but there is a need for higher quality content that delivers new insights, which I think couldn't be more relevant and timely. So I'm kind of curious what you think specifically about the role of, and I'm going to pick on something that's near and dear for us, and that is original research and thought leadership. What do you think about the role of original research-driven content or thought leadership content as a platform for that call for higher quality?
Um, I think it's critical. So what we're finding, let's say leveraging AI for content creation, what we're finding is um, providing the or training the AI on a smaller amount of high quality content and insights is actually more effective than just doing a big dump of everything you have. And so I think that original research, that strong differentiated core messaging for your company, and the surrounding case studies, et cetera, you know, a small set of high quality content can more effectively train the AI. And then you can leverage the AI to do, you know, more personalized content, content for different formats, all kinds of different campaign content, blog content, et cetera. But unless you have strong, original, like you said, research, messaging that's differentiated and compelling for your users as kind of the core kernel that you're leveraging to train the AI, it won't be effective. And so we're definitely seeing a move to that. Also, and that's not just with marketing content, but also with sales enablement content. A lot of things that marketers do is sales enablement in B2B. And, sellers, when we look at sellers, they spend a lot of their time in non-customer facing activities. And a lot of that's spent trying to find the right content, find the right marketing or product marketing expert or any expert in the company to come talk to their client, figuring out how to coordinate all those things. While, now with AI, you can say, look here, here's the core set of critical content and expertise. And then you can train a chatbot or some other capability so that sellers can access that very quickly and drive up their productive time. And so, I think quality content is more important than ever. Less is more, and then leave it to the AI to create the permutations, for the different channels, different personalization for different types of customers and industries. But that core content is critical.
Yeah, I agree, and that functionality that AI uh, early on was enabled you to sort of ask questions of a PDF, for example, right? So you could have a natural language kind of conversation with a resource, and even like Google's LLM, or Google Notebook, I'm sorry, and you could produce or aggregate research resources and create a podcast or whatever. But I think now about what you're talking about is if we're able to aggregate, those universal truths, that distinctive and original information perspective about a brand, about your company, and then you allow these different stakeholders or customer success, sales, marketing to be able to tap that source of truth via an AI chatbot. You can then use natural language to sort of ask it questions about data, about examples, even maybe emulate your customer, kind of sort of, hey, would this be a good email tone of voice for this particular customer segment, or would this one, and there's a lot of opportunity there if I'm tracking correctly.
Absolutely, and we could talk about synthetic customers as well, but which you're alluding to. But the one thing that I see a lot working with a lot of different marketing organizations is that we start with a conversation in AI, but inevitably one of the key enablers is missing, which is not enough people who are strong at writing great messaging, doing great original research, driving something that's differentiated, and really understanding their users for their whatever the solution they're providing. And they're more important than ever. Oftentimes they're product marketers, but they tend to be other functions as well. And so, I think meeting those people who can do that is more important than ever. And most companies are either underinvested or not happy with the quality of the people who are doing that. And so that's becoming more important than ever in the age of AI. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of companies. And the reason why that's hard is that let's say, a lot of this is product marketing. Finding a good product marketer is difficult because, and this, like, this is why the people hire your company, right? Number one, finding people who are just good at messaging and really understand, that really good at messaging, really good at writing something differentiated and getting, frontline sellers and frontline marketers excited about it. That's a difficult skill. And then the second thing about that is understanding the user for your product and understanding the product you sell and having a deep understanding that you can do that well. Having both that combination is hard. And so those people are more critical than ever because of what you described. You need that original thinking, original messaging, original research.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually just launched a new research report on the importance of original research and thought leadership as a sort of, we call it an engine for the flywheel of content that can be, those derivative messages and narratives and personalizations across different channels. And it was really interesting because, the vast majority of respondents, we've had like 797 respondents in the US, UK. And the vast majority, like as in like 97% said that, yeah, we do believe that thought leadership has full funnel benefits, right? And yet it was something like 30 some percent actually take it that far. So there's an amazing concentration on top, tofu mofu, as it were, top of funnel, middle funnel, but not so much end of funnel or post sale, using that distinctive point of view. And you're making some really smart suggestions, or you're talking about the availability of this kind of information to sales, right? Because they're spending so much time trying to find the right information, for example. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I agree. And, the type of content, we should be looking at from top of funnel all the way to bottom of funnel, as you mentioned. And the closer, a client gets to that final decision, the more important it is that thought leadership, but also that peer validation, opinions of other people, like bringing that all together becomes more and more important as you get close to that decision.
Absolutely. So a couple of weeks ago, I attended an event in New York where Mimi Turner and Jan Swartz from LinkedIn's Marketplace Innovation Group presented on a concept called Buyability. And you are listed as a co-author, along with your peer Jamie Cleghorn, of a report that they shared called Five Rules of Buyability. Could you describe, the notion of buyability and why it's so important and relevant right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So buyability, and we're still in the early years of this concept, is essentially, um, giving B2B marketers a playbook, and messaging strategies to just maximize the probability that they'll win over the buying group that they're targeting, versus kind of the traditional kind of brand versus demand, MQLs, all of those type of metrics. And so what we have to recognize is there's a few key things that we found when we started doing research on B2B buying. One is that, when these buying groups buy in B2B, they care a lot. They have a lot of fear of messing up. And so they want to make sure that who they select is a company that is a safe choice, that if things don't go well, that they won't get criticized for, making the choice. So they want a lot of, peer validation, case studies, et cetera. The second is this notion of, hidden buyers, which is that there's not just the core buyer for your product, which is the core user or the kind of CIO, whatever your product is, but there's also hidden buyers. There's things like the CFO, the head of procurement, et cetera. We kind of know that, but when you actually look at what B2B seller marketers do, A, they don't always target them, although they have a big influence on buying. And B, they just care about brand, essentially. They care about, like, have I heard of this company? Right? That's really what they care about because they're trying to mitigate downside risk. So just talking about how great your product is, although that's important, expanding that beyond that, peer validation, you know, um, making yourself well known in your category is very important. And so, all that's kind of important. And then the last that some other pieces of it's very important to kind of have a lot of peer validation. That's more important than ever because of what I just described. You want to make sure that, it's a safe choice. You want to make sure that people like you are using the product. And you want to make sure that, hey, you have a lot of top of mind, your buyers have a lot of top of mind knowledge of your product when they're ready to buy. And so that's why it's important to have, a lot of recommendations from your peers. Um, a lot of times the biggest thing that drives top of mind recognition is the person's worked with you before. So all these kind of things are just really important. And so we have this concept of like getting on the day one list, which the day one list is when your buyer is ready to buy, right? The short list, they have in their mind 6 companies already in mind, right? On average. And they, no matter how short or long their buying process is, they may add 1 or 2, but something like 90% of the time, they buy off that initial list. And again, it's for all the reasons that I described. They're going for a choice that's safe, that's peer validated, that they heard of. The hidden buyers are just trying to pick choices that they top of mind recognition so they don't get in trouble for making a bad choice. So all these kind of things are really critical. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of different things to drive buyability. Those are kind of the high level. There's a lot more as well, but that's kind of high level. Then we try to think a lot about what does that mean for, as a marketer, how do you work with sellers to go to market? What type of content and messaging do you use? And when do you use different types of messaging? Like, for example, as I mentioned earlier, early on, you may be focusing a lot on peer validation, brand type stuff being top of mind, making sure you get in the day one list. But as you get closer to the sale, you want to drive more references, more peer validation, more case studies, etc., of more companies that are like the buyer. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to say, hey, we have this research. Now, what does that mean from a playbook perspective? And what type of companies are buyable or not? And why are they buyable or not? What can we learn? And what playbooks do they use? And many times, you think, hey, I'm a big, huge global brand. Everyone knows me, but they may not know you for the category that you care about. They may know you for what you used to do. And so a lot of these big tech companies are being beaten out by small, high growth AI startups because, hey, those are the companies that are well known in that category, not the big tech company, even though the big tech company's brand is well known. And so there's a lot of exciting things going on in that space, and we're very early innings. And so we are really looking at how does that tie to financial value, and what does that mean for the playbook that sales and marketing use to go after accounts?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And, really there's an interesting connection, I feel like, with, Ehrenberg Bass's research on the 95-5 rule, right? The 95% of buyers are out market, 5% are in market. So obviously you want to market to those that aren't ready yet. So you can be on that day one list when the time comes for them to make the transition. And, those concepts like mental and physical availability, and there's a lot of really interesting insights coming out of this work, out of that group, and I think it moves the market forward. As far as the practices and B2B marketing,
Yeah.
because it's
And
not.
one, yeah,
Mhm.
I was saying one concept around that has kind of been taken off with a lot of the CMOs is this concept of category fame, right? Which is, it's not about, like, of course, everyone knows like Salesforce, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, etc. But like, are they always famous for all the categories they want to be famous in? And so what I talk a lot about is what category is critical for you, and are you famous in that category? Are you top of mind in that category? And many big brands are not.
It's interesting. We have a synonym at our company for category fame, and we call it best answer. Are you the best answer for what your
I remember
customers are
that.
looking
Yes.
for? You
Yes.
remember that? The book
Yeah,
Optimize? It's
that's a
up
class.
here
Yes, I
somewhere.
remember that. That's a classic top rank notion. Yeah. You called it a lot
It
earlier.
is.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, and we have this whole best answer marketing framework, system, and a playbook, and all these sorts of things. But it's sort of this confluence of being relevant but being meaningful, and that's attentive to, of course, the mental state or situation context for where the buyer is, right? And so if they're just learning about, through the whole cycle, right? So if they're just learning about you, if they're considering and they're making choices and decisions and recommendations, and especially post sale, where there's opportunity to kind of close the loop back to growth or even net new because of referrals and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we used to talk about this a long time ago, like 10 years ago, or even longer ago, you and I talked about this. But now with AI, tech, and automation, you can do it in a much more targeted way against a very specific set of accounts that matter to you, around a category that matters to you. And so, with the available tech and data and AI now, you can do it way better.
So you've talked about building marketing capabilities at scale across, like channels and functions like sales, marketing, customer success. And, there are a lot of B2B organizations that still operate around campaigns and especially disconnected campaigns. What do you think it's going to take for marketing organizations to evolve from that campaign perspective to something more along the lines of building systems?
Yeah. I think what's critical is that, the traditional campaign kind of marketing runs a campaign, generates leads, then passes a sales picks it up from there and kind of takes it to, builds pipeline, et cetera. You know, that's that's kind of upended with what you're describing, which is now with tech and data, you can coordinate sales and marketing much more effectively. So when I think about systems, we have this concept that we've built called sales play system, which is not like a traditional sales play, but like it's all about, number one, whether you're targeting SMB or big companies, you have data on every company, right, on the planet. Um, Getting very clear on these are the specific set of accounts that I want to go after. Like back 10, 15 years ago when you guys started, but when you guys started talking 20 years ago, that wasn't possible. Now it's incredibly possible. So then you can define the set of accounts you want to go after. And then you can be very specific on what the sales cadence is going to be and what the marketing cadence is going to be to go after those specific set of accounts. Um, and how that's going to work, and you can automate all of that. And so, what's more important than ever, I think, is driving that coordinated approach to going after these specific set of accounts. So you say, here are the accounts I'm going after. You know, Marketing is going to do this first, warm up the key buying group, and then the seller's going to go and then do a call, and then marketing will do this, and again, that can all be coordinated through marketing automation and sales cadence software and all of that kind of stuff. And then building the content to enable that, make it consistent across the marketing go to market and the sales go to market. All that's very critical. And then obviously measuring it. And so you can do that in a much more programmatic way. And then the last piece of that is actually when you push it into the field, how do you train your sales and marketing teams to actually execute? And then how do you monitor it over time? I think that type of system, as you describe it, is more effective in getting huge returns from what we're seeing versus the traditional kind of marketing campaign silo leads past the sales. And so, now you can do that because of tech and data and AI. Now, you know, in the old days when you ran those type of plays, it was hard to scale. But now with AI, you can really scale up the number of plays you run, the amount of content that you use in those plays, the cadences that sellers and marketers are running, et cetera. And so now all of that's very scalable like it wasn't before. And so I think we're moving towards that type of coordinated go-to-market versus the traditional way of doing things. And it's only enabled by the tech data and AI capabilities.
It's exciting times. I mean, this idea of, being limited to quarterly campaigns, start, stop, as opposed to sort of maybe you're kind of describing an always on perspective, like a system that is always running, right? And technology enables that. Whereas before we couldn't really, not efficiently at least, right?
Yeah. No, it's always on, and there'll be some kind of plays or whatever you call them, which will always be on. There'll be some that are kind of very specific, like, hey, we launched a new product, and so we'll do it over a specific time. There's some that'll be involved in, like, selling existing customers, selling new customers, et cetera. And the beauty of that is that when you package it in a systematic way, then it becomes very predictable as well. So I need to hit this pipeline target by this quarter. I know if I pull this play, from past times we ran this play, I know when the pipeline's going to hit, what the close rates are going to be on average, et cetera. And so you not only are able to execute very quickly and coordinate sales and marketing execution, but you have predictability as well. So it becomes much more effective than the traditional way of going to market.
So, in your role now, like you're involved in AI adoption, transformation of marketing for B2B organizations. How do you know an organization is actually ready for an AI-enabled marketing transformation? And how do what are the red flags to tell you, no, this situation is not ready?
Yeah. Um, First of all, everyone has to do it, so they don't have a choice. But I think some of the enablers are, um, number one is you have to have a tops down mandate. If there's not a tops down mandate, like I know every company, it has bottoms up AI happening, right? Like whether officially or unofficially, every individual is leveraging AI tools either like, for their own job or making their own job more efficient, or they're playing with it, trying to see how they can improve what they do day to day. And most companies are doing that officially, unofficially. The problem is, as I mentioned earlier, you're just getting micro productivity. So you're taking an existing process and you're making your individual part of that process better. But, you know, history doesn't, as history has taught us, automating a bad process doesn't make that bad process good. You know, uh, remember when ERPs came on the scene, right? Like just bringing in ERP software didn't awesome fix everything. And so, unless you have a top-down mandate to drive, scalable process change, it'll be very hard to get bottom line benefits. Um, Secondly, I think that's the biggest thing. I think secondly, it's really being willing to upend the way things are happening today, right? And so, and again, that can only happen through top down mandate, where you say, look, this is the existing way we create content. You know, irrespective of AI, we can probably eliminate a bunch of middle steps and a bunch of approvals and a bunch of humans in the loop, and then we can have AI capabilities that will automate a lot of this, improved process. And then we kind of build the process first and then bring in the right AI tool. And nowadays it's almost always off the shelf, to actually help automate that process. And the reason why it's off the shelf is it's just changing so fast, right? So doing that is very critical. And so again, having tops down mandate, being willing to really look at processes and really upend them and change them. And then being willing to kind of give up the old process. That's the change management piece, right? Is that even if you build a new process and build new capabilities, people will still kind of hold on to the previous process unless you take it away and take away the old tools and really force the change, and then the change happens. And so I think the willingness, the tops down mandate, the willingness to drive the rapid change in the process, and the willingness to actually test and bring in outside technology is all very critical for success.
Yeah, it is. You really are talking about potentially a substantial change management sort of initiative, right? Because we have obviously technology and the capabilities, and there's a promise of those outcomes, but there's the human behavior element too, right? Um, Obviously, in organizations, you have folks who want to protect their status quo for whatever reason, and there are other sort of points of view and perspectives and that sort of thing. But obviously, there is a tremendous amount of upside, and the leadership, as you say, the top down sponsored sort of element is crucial in order to make this something that can be adopted organization wide, or amongst the department or unit that it's relevant to.
Yeah. And the change management challenge happens from day zero, right? Like even, uh, but what we found is that with a lot of these use cases for AI, again, I'll keep going with content. Like there's a perception of how content is created, and then there's a reality of how the process actually happens within the company. And so getting that baseline reality of how a piece of content is created and how, it actually works, like you kind of who actually has knowledge of the content and messaging, they have to wait 3 days to get this person to look at it, and they wait 3 days, and then why is these three people looking at it, all that kind of stuff. And actually mapping out the real process, not the perceived one, is often an eye opener, even before you start to look at how you can improve it. And so again, like you have to be willing to dig in, and people have to be willing to be on board with kind of talking about how it works today and have to want to change.
Yeah, I mean, subsequently, there's a natural optimization that's gonna occur by documenting those workflows, and enabling an AI application for more effective, efficient work, right? And, that makes me think of a question for you about efficiency and the cost, or is there a cost? So obviously, it's sort of like the low-hanging fruit solve for AI adoption is doing things more efficiently, or faster. And you've talked about, scaling AI for something bigger, like in terms of, well, you've already talked about in our conversation today about growth for the organization and, or even strategic differentiation. I'm just wondering, could you walk us through an example or even a scenario where AI actually created value beyond that efficiency or cost reduction benefit and actually became something that impacted marketing from a brand or demand standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early, but uh, we worked with one company that was kind of rethinking its content process. And we looked at the content process today, and it was just a extremely long process, with a lot of approvals, and a lot of people in the loop. And it was just a very long and convoluted process. What we said was, we said, let's map it out, right? And this is multiple companies who've done this. So I would say this, I would, even stepping back, I would say working with many marketing organizations in B2B, the top use case is almost always content first. um, that's the one that always, like, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time that does. And so with many organizations, the content challenge has been the one that's driven a lot of upside. And what we've seen at these companies, if I could generalize, is, you map out the process, the actual process, and you kind of realize that it goes from product marketer, um, content writer, approval, executive approval. Somebody else has a say in the process. It has to be go through a system. It's all manual, so people are waiting for other people to come back. And by the time it actually hits the customer, it's a long time. Like anywhere from months to, usually months, right? And so, we look at that process and we say, look, before we even bring in AI, we can take out a bunch of middle steps. And so we say, do you really need this and this and this? And then we say, like, for the steps that you need, we can leverage AI to codify all those best practices and do the checks in a more automated way, so that if the human does come in the loop, most of it's already done, right? And so, we call it like shift left, which means that, you want to go from the product marketer, the person who has knowledge of the content or knowledge of the messaging. You want to get them, you want to minimize the steps between them and getting it out the door, right? And so you basically say, like, hey, leverage the AI, create multiple versions of what you're trying to create. Um, go through the minimum number of humans in loop, and then get it out the door. And again, the benefit of doing that is that you get rapid time to market, you get significantly more personalization, um, and just get more things out the door faster, which can more effectively drive more campaigns, more content to customers. When you look at sales plays, it can let you do more plays in a single quarter than you could historically, which allows you to kind of, drive more upside faster. And so even a simple process of accelerating content creation can translate into your ability to drive more for the customer. And so that's, again, a typical example that we see with B2B marketing organizations. And so while historically they might go, run, let's say, 1 to 2 coordinated plays with the sellers. Now they can run significantly more, 5, 6, 7, 8 or more plays, and then they could scale them across products, across types of plays, across geographies much more faster.
Yeah, the research from Content Marketing Institute, not too long ago, they released a B2B content marketing research report, and use of AI was for content generate, like by far over any other application was content generation. You're talking about AI use that can touch on a lot of different disciplines, right? From obviously content, but search, social, even influencer marketing, which are happen to be key themes of our show here. Um, how do you keep the human, the creative, the emotional edge, as it were, from getting washed away by, efforts to optimize and automate? Or I would say, how do we how do we preserve the break free of boring B2B elements in a marketing environment that's increasingly, leaning on AI for improvement?
Yeah, I think it's all in what I call the kernel. What are the things that you train the AI on, and making sure that that's interesting, unique, differentiated, and resonates with your clients. That I think is the most important piece, and that's kind of the piece that kind of drives everything else. So that's kind of in the kind of training. The second thing is with that, even if you look at like AI video, what people don't realize is that although an AI kind of created the video, it still requires a professional video producer to do that. Like you still need to understand, what's a great story, how do you tie together scenes, what should the lighting be and how should the lighting look? How should it be integrated? How should it integrate from scene to scene? Storyboard. You could do that faster, but you still need that skill in video production and design to create something that will actually stand out from the crowd that people will see. And so I think, I think people forget that. Yes, you can significantly, you can produce things super fast, but like what are you producing and what are you telling the AI to produce? And how are you designing that and what messaging are you giving it? That still can be tremendously unique and differentiated.
That's it's interesting. It kind of connects to the idea that I've, kind of realized a long time ago is that AI, and this is a generalization, of course, AI just makes you more of what you are. So, if you are a very curious, imaginative person, a very great storyteller, whether I give you a box of crayons and a piece of paper, or I give you an AI platform that can generate video or images or whatever, your output is going to be phenomenal compared to someone who is absent those skills, experience, and characteristics, right? And so, right on, what you're saying is that the retention of that humanity, the emotion, and all, that creative edge is still connected to the human input, as you say, and how there's another expression, the tool is only as effective as the expertise of the person using it. And so those creative souls that are able to, kind of crack the code, as it were, on how to really use the tool to manifest their creative ideas are going to see amazing outputs and outcomes. And it doesn't matter that it was made with AI. It's the end product is something that really resonates with people.
Absolutely. Things haven't changed from 10 years ago where there's just so much out there that even if you use AI, right, you only differentiate yourself if you come up with something that's truly unique, right? And you train the AI in something truly unique, and you have a capability to work with the AI to produce something that's truly unique using your skills. Creativity is still critical.
Absolutely. It's funny. I just saw a video from a really well-known, super smart SEO person. Lily Ray is her name. And she did a presentation about generative engine optimization, but the way she used AI video creation tools to create this story about a dragon. It was amazing, and she read it like a storybook, right? As she did this presentation, I was like, "This is brilliant," right? And clearly, AI was used to make uh, these visual assets that went along with the story, but it was her imagination at thinking about that's the way I want to communicate this information, which made it infotaining at the least, entertaining, for sure. And obviously, there's another expression I'm going to throw out there. It's not, I think it's increasingly important in B2B, especially in the context of AI tools and optimizations. And that is, it's not enough to inform people anymore. We've got to make them feel something. And so the role of storytelling is more important than ever. The tools are changing. That's okay. But being able to connect at that level is just as important in B2B as it is anywhere else.
Absolutely. And if you take the buyability concept I talked about earlier, like where AI can play, you know, uh, can, can we rethink a case study, right? Like one thing that buyability tells us is that you want peer validation, right? Um, we should rethink how we talk, how we show case studies, how we talk about, references, how we talk about, all these things. How can we rethink that in a way that makes you more viable? And so there's a lot of opportunity there to do that and to rethink that. And so you know, marketers had certain tools at their hand before, so they had a limited amount of things to use for their creativity. Now they have a lot more. So hopefully we'll see a lot more creative um, things coming through, but the same core messaging.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So let's break open Rishi's crystal ball. Look ahead 2 or 3 years. What do you think the new normal is going to look like for B2B marketers, go-to-market teams that are now AI native? And along with that, are there things that teams should be doing now to prepare for that?
I think that big impacts is going to be like with any tech over the last few years is being able to drive more faster, right? At higher quality. And so I think the challenge is going to be, I think that's what's going to happen. And then people will be much more agile, or the survivors will be much more agile and be able to do things much more faster. The ones who have been able to rewire their processes. What that enables them to do is few things. One is drive significantly more personalization, drive things in a much more targeted way against very specific people and accounts they care about, and be able to measure that and adjust much more quickly than they were ever before. So I think that's going to be very critical. I think the other element that's going to be critical is because of AEO, or whatever the term we use nowadays, for you know this notion of influence is now back again. I mean, it never went away, but it's now bigger than ever because today a lot of those engines are leveraging, Reddit, Quora, communities, etc. And so now, as a B2B marketer, that's where peer validation may start happening. And so, you know, how do you actually take advantage and influence those channels and participate in those channels more so than ever? A lot of marketing organizations are not set up to do that. And so I think there'll be, a lot of, so I think those are kind of the big things is that, the ones who survive will be better, faster, faster, higher quality. They'll be much more agile. They'll be able to drive faster growth against a targeted set of accounts and targeted categories, much more effectively. It'll be much more personalized. They'll be able to drive, and again, as I mentioned in Buyability, a lot of this can be involved, peer validation, driving top of mind awareness, driving category fame. That's going to be very critical as you go to market. So I think that's all going to be important. And then people will be thinking a lot about how do I optimize for AI. I think that's going to, and that may majorly change operating models for marketing, depending on the direction that goes.
Of course, I'm biased, but I think this notion of best answer marketing and the framework that goes with that hits on everything that you're talking about, or a lot of the things that you're talking about, at least. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But I think a lot of companies are shocked by the sources and the LLMs use, right? And it's causing a lot of marketers to rethink their strategies.
so you've had, I mean, you look across your career and you've had some really tremendous opportunities to lead marketing organizations and accomplish a lot of things. And I'm just kind of curious, as you look back on that, what are you most proud of in your career?
Yeah, so I'm most proud of the large scale transformations that I've led, and they've been mostly digital led. Uh, and so, at a lot of companies, for example, at Dell, I kind of I joined in the early years of B2B marketing, and we really built that capability. Did a pretty strong transformation at Dun Bradstreet. It was known for kind of what it used to do and was very outdated and wasn't really top of mind for people. Did a big transformation of the organization and the brand, the messaging, etc. And then did a similar thing at Vonage. So I think a lot of the large scale transformations that I've led, both as a CMO and then brought to my Bain career, have been most exciting. And so, did a whole set of transformations for companies to drive more digital tech and data, and now doing it again with AI, which is even more exciting than ever.
I mean, being your success, your experience at having had such huge impact, I mean, as one can achieve through a major transformation like that is really impressive, and not a lot of folks in their careers and not a lot of CMOs necessarily get to affect that kind of or level of change. So congrats to you on that.
Yeah, and if I could
Let's
give
look at things.
advice, well, if I could give advice,
Yeah,
like why was that
yeah.
possible? It's looking for great CEOs. So I've always been very proud of the CEOs I worked for, and they've always been very supportive of driving these transformations. And so I think, advice I would give marketers is, and this is what I always did. I always looked for great CEOs who I could work for, who are very transformation oriented. And I think that made a big difference. And I would advise that with everyone.
That's great advice. Yeah. Um, so let's change things up a little bit and talk about non-work and its impact, like hobbies, non-work passion that has influenced you the most.
I think the biggest thing is I'm a prolific reader of and irony of it is I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I read mostly fiction. And I think that has helped me develop empathy towards, customers, audiences, etc. But B also really helped me think about storytelling over the years. And so with fiction, this you see so many different ways to tell great stories. And that's really, I think, influenced me quite a bit. So I do love reading all different genres of books, although I do read a lot of science fiction, but
I
I
was
do
just
read
going to
all.
ask you. I was just going to ask you if there's a particular genre, like I grew up on sci-fi, for example, on
I do, yeah.
myself, but
I read a lot of science fiction, mostly that, but I also, I read also a lot of general literature and things like that. So I try to read all different genres, but the majority is science fiction. That's just personal interest.
fantastic. All right. Well, we'll have to share some notes on favorite books afterwards. So let's wrap things up with something that goes a little bit beyond this sort of B2B conversation. If you could be doing anything else as a career option, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I would love to be a writer. Not that I would be a great one. I don't know, but I have a certain healthy respect for because as I mentioned before, I love to read fiction. It always blows my mind about how these authors are able to tell these great, engaging stories, and how even new authors and new books can drive kind of innovations in terms of storytelling and all that, even though that's been around forever. And so I just admire great writers. And so I would, I think, maybe this is more of a wish than what I would do, but definitely being a great writer or being a writer.
Let's get on it. What would it be, a science fiction book, or would it be some
I don't
other,
know. I don't know. I don't
you're
know.
not sure?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe
All
a
right.
science fiction book about marketing, right?
Yeah.
Although the funny thing is that a science fiction book about marketing 5 years ago would have been actually nonfiction today.
What we're doing today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
Oh, this has been great. I'm so happy to reconnect with you. It's not going to be 10 more years before, well, 10 more years before we do another interview, but we'll definitely, yeah, hopefully when I'm in New York area next, maybe we can connect. That'd be great. I really appreciate you spending the time and sharing your insights. I know our listeners and viewers really appreciate the experience and point of view that you bring. And it's been great to connect and chat about this topic with you. Where's the best place for people to get a hold of you or connect with you?
Definitely LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. Very, I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and I monitor it a lot. So just shoot me a note on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect.
Okay, super. Well, I'll make sure we include a link to that. Thank you so much, Rishi.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Beyond B2B Marketing podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you can stay tuned for our next super smart, interesting guest. And remember, there's no better time than now to break free of boring B2B.